how do we maintain a lack of ego? So how do we take care of our own ego in the face of success and adoration from others? The Yajna ceremony that we perform each evening just before the Arati is a perfect teacher on this. Most of you were just in the Arati prior to this, and just before the Arati, we perform this fire ceremony called the Yajna. And in the Yajna, we offer what's called ahuti, or samagri, into the flames. Now, what that ahuti is actually a mixture of seeds. And here's what the beautiful metaphor is. In our lives, on a spiritual path, we are told we should be egoless. Annihilate the ego, get rid of the ego. And yet, success, adoration are things that tend to bolster the ego. And the spiritual path does not say, thou shalt not succeed, thou shalt not be adored, nobody shall tell you that you're wonderful, that's the only way. The only way to be spiritual is to fail, make sure no one likes you. That's not the path. So the Yajna gives us the perfect solution. If you take a seed and you plant a seed in fertile ground, and you water it, you shine the sun on it, what happens? The seed sprouts, it later becomes a tree, and when you try to uproot that tree, it's very, very difficult. It's easy to uproot a sprout, even easier to uproot a seed. Very, very difficult to uproot a tree. That's the symbol of our ego. It begins with a seed, and then we succeed, we get adored, we get put on pedestals. Or, by the way, it's important to mention, the ego isn't only positive. The ego also works the other way. The same ego that says, I am so great, also says, I am worthless. Do not think for a moment that hating yourself is the humble answer to ego. That thinking that you are useless and worthless and the victim, that somehow that's being humble, while thinking you're great is having an ego. They're both egos. Because what both of them are is focused on me. I am the great one, or I am the awful one. Either way, it's about me. And it's about me as this separate being that somehow has been uniquely infused with greatness or uniquely infused with awfulness. Uniquely infused with brilliance and success, or uniquely infused with being the one who always gets the short end of the stick. Either way, it's ego. So we grow through our lives, and the ego, like a tree, grows and grows, and the sun and the rain that make our sprout grow in our lives are things like success and adoration, or failure, depression, misery, difficulty. In both cases, the ego gets its roots, almost like an octopus, around our heart. And we then come onto a spiritual path that teaches us to let go of the ego. And it feels like our heart's being torn out with us, because we are no more the great one than we are the victim. The spiritual path wipes both of those out. You think you're the worst, the spiritual path will want you to annihilate that ego. You think you're the best, it will want you to annihilate that. Both of those are ways of being stuck in this individual self, separate from the world, separate from God. What's the answer then? Well, we go back to the yajna. If you take a seed, and before you plant it, you roast it, even for a moment, it doesn't matter how fertile the soil, it doesn't matter how much sun, how much rain, that seed will never sprout. So when we do the yajna, when we do this fire ceremony, it's not just ritual. It's not just the priests are chanting and I'm throwing seeds into the fire while I'm thinking about something else. It's really roasting the seed of my ego in God's fire, so that no matter how much I succeed, no matter how many pedestals I may be on, no matter how much I get adored, or simultaneously, no matter how much I may fail, no matter how much my life may feel like, Job, the one I've been singled out for the special punishment. Either way, that seed will not sprout. And so when we do the yajna, it reminds us, not for me, but for you. Not for me, but for you. That's what the mantras that the priests chant. At the end of the mantras it says, Idam namam, Idam namam. And that literally means not for me, but for you. Not for me, but for you. What I'm doing is not for me. Now many of us, it may not necessarily be for me in terms of my bank account. But I may be doing things that look philanthropic, that look charitable, that look wonderful. But if I'm doing them to fill the holes inside me, if I'm doing them to convince myself that I too am a worthy being, and if I just do enough good things, then I'll be able to look at myself in the mirror. Well, in both cases, it's still for me. Whether it's about accumulating money or whether it's accumulating enough good feelings about myself, in either case it's for me. And the lesson is obviously it's much better to work for others. This is the whole concept of seva, karma yoga. But just doing seva, just doing humanitarian work, just volunteering, just feeding the homeless is not the highest point. Because many of us still get into that for just ways to feel better about ourselves. Nothing wrong with that. But it's not the ultimate level. The ultimate level is not for me, but for you, God, whatever you want to flow through me. Whether it's something after doing, I feel like, oh, that was great, I succeeded. Or whether it was something that didn't work out. In either case, my goal becomes just to be the vehicle and the vessel for God's will. So the way that we maintain an egoless state in the face of this, as the question said, in the face of success and adoration, is to remember it's not me. It's not about us. When most of us succeed, we feel like, oh yeah, I did it. I worked so hard. I'm so smart. I'm so good. I saved the day. But if you're really honest and you look back on all the times that you didn't save the day, most of us tried pretty hard in those times too. It's not just that trying is what makes it succeed. It's not just that being smart is what makes it succeed. It's that in that moment, this was God's will. This was part of the divine plan. I was aligning myself with the divine plan. That's what becomes the ultimate understanding, is, oh God, yes, I've succeeded. Yes, these people are adoring me, but it's only your grace. As Puja Swamiji always reminds us, one little nerve in our brain out of trillions, literally trillions of brain cells, one of them stops firing or fires incorrectly, or one of the tiny, tiny, tiny little channels that carries blood gets a little something stuck in there and it can't push the blood through. It's over. Forget succeeding. You can't feed yourself. You can't speak. What control do we really have over that? As they always says, who wakes us up in the morning? We can't even wake ourselves up. If you think you're so great, any of us, when we get into these moments of the ego, a great way to quickly dissolve it is sit down for 10 minutes and say, I am going to focus on my breath. I'm going to meditate for 10 minutes. And I'm going to focus on my breath. And the reason that it's such a great technique specifically for this is, inevitably, unless you're Puja Swamiji, in those 10 minutes, your mind will wander. The longer you've been meditating, the less it will wander, but nonetheless, inevitably, in 10 minutes, it will wander. You will have to bring it back. In the moment that it wandered, before you brought it back, who was breathing for you? You weren't aware of the breath in that moment. You'd gone off. You'd gone off to yesterday or tomorrow or Paris or Moscow. Your parents' home, your children's home, the shopping center. Who was breathing? And when we recognize that we can't even for 10 minutes keep our own life force going. The single most important thing we need to stay alive is the breath. And for 10 minutes, we can't even do it. So the minute we recognize that, it's very hard to feel really arrogant about much else. If I can't even keep myself alive for 10 minutes, I can't remember to breathe for 10 minutes, what kind of delusion am I in to think that I'm able to do anything else? The same one who is breathing for me, even when I've gone off, the same one who wakes me up, is the same one. And it doesn't matter what name or what form or what religion we are, but is the same one who flows through us and makes things happen when they are part of the divine plan. All of the perspiration, all of the intelligence, all of the hard work are not going to make something happen if it's not in the divine plan. And that's important to remember, because a lot of times we wonder, why am I failing? And it's the equivalent in many cases of literally rowing your boat upstream. You can row it the right way. You can be an expert oarsman. But if the current is going in the other direction, you're not going to get anywhere. And really what the key is to recognize, oh God, what way is your stream flowing? And how can I align myself with that so that with even less perspiration, I'm able to get even farther. And even though it may not necessarily have been the direction that I had thought my life was going to go, or that when I was a kid I had planned for, but it's so clear that this is the direction your river is flowing. For how long do I want to fight it? Why not use my strength, use my ability in the direction that so clearly is flowing through me? So that becomes the answer. There is a flow, a force through us, through all of us, a divine power. That's what's helping us to do what we're doing. Without that, we wouldn't be able to. So for everything we do, everything that becomes a success, it's just thank you, God. Thank you, God, for flowing through me. Thank you, God, for carrying my boat. And when we do that, then the ego starts to crumble itself.